Today I'm making a couple healthy recipes for us. They're gonna be Thanksgiving inspired, like healthy Thanksgiving side dishes that you could make for you and your family. They're very veggie based, and they also are very diabetes friendly because we're going a little bit lower carb today. I have some broth and it's just heating up right here. I'm gonna go ahead and move it to this burner. It's a little bit hot. But what I'm just gonna start is our potato cauliflower mash. And so we are doing mashed potatoes, but we're going to sneak in some more veggies by adding cauliflower, about half and half, so that we can overall reduce the total carbohydrate impact of our mashed potatoes. And cauliflower is insanely good for you. So trying to add a little bit more nutrition to something that's otherwise not super nutritious. I have some Yukon Gold potatoes that I have just quartered up right here. I left the peel on because this is more of like a rustic mash, and the peel actually has the most nutrition as part of the potato. So it has a lot of the fiber. So we're just gonna go ahead and put our quartered potatoes right into, I'm doing it in broth, but you could certainly use water because broth just gives it a little bit more flavor. And then you could use a head of cauliflower and just chop it up, but I actually am taking a shortcut and using this bagged cauliflower. And we're just gonna add that in there at the same time. This is probably gonna simmer for about 15 minutes or until your potatoes are tender. Now, a common misconception when making mashed potatoes is that you can't overcook the potatoes because they're just gonna get mashed anyway, right? Well, actually wrong. They can get pretty waterlogged if you leave them in there for too long. So you want to cook just until tender. Okay, so I'm gonna add in all of our cauliflower here. And then I'm just gonna cover that and let it simmer while we make our next dish. And next thing here, which is gonna be a stuffing or dressing or filling or whatever you call it. However, we are not, I always recommend that people not stuff your turkey, actually that you make it on the side, just because stuffing is one of the most foodborne illness-prone foods just from the bacteria that comes down from the inside of a raw bird. So trust me, you can make it just as delicious, making it and then baking it separately from the turkey. And then I would suggest you stuff your turkey with like citrus and herbs and garlic cloves and ginger or whatever, and stuff that all in there. You won't necessarily eat those things, but they give the turkey a lot of flavor. Okay, so I'm just going to melt a couple tablespoons of butter, and we're gonna have a lot of really similar flavors in our stuffing, but guess what? It's not gonna have any bread.
Cool.
So we are making a completely grain-free stuffing.
Wow, okay.
Okay. So to be honest, it's mostly just vegetables because that's what stuffing would be if it didn't have the bread in it. So I have it over medium-high heat. We're gonna go in with some onion, mushroom, celery, and apple. And if you think those things don't go well together, they totally do, trust me. A little bit of sweetness, crunchiness, earthiness from the mushrooms, and they give kind of a hearty flavor. And then the crunch from the celery and the aromatic from the onion. So as you can see, I'm chopping my onion here. I just made some vertical slices. Now I'm going kind of horizontal slices. Now I'm doing my vertical slices along the lines of the onion. And I have the root end on there just to hold it all together until the very end. Okay. I'm gonna save a little bit. And then our mushroom as well. Now the mushroom and the onion take a little bit longer than those other two, so we're gonna put those in first. So I think that one of the common mistakes that people make when sauteing vegetables is that they have their heat too low. Okay, and they aren't able to get that nice browned color on their food. Brown is flavored, so you want to get a good sear on your vegetables as you cook them, and it really just brings out that depth of flavor, especially, for example, with mushrooms. Okay, mushrooms can end up kind of spongy if you undercook them, and most people undercook their mushrooms. So make sure you have high heat, and another thing is you kind of want to get everything coated with the fat, the olive oil or the butter, but then stop touching it for a little bit. Okay, when people are constantly doing this, it does not give your food chance enough to get that sear on the bottom. So when you're pretty much cooking anything, meat, eggs, vegetables, stop stirring. And I'll just add these in as well. Got a little bit of a head start. And some apple for some crunchiness and sweetness. What did you just add, the green? The celery. Yeah. Celery and Fuji apple. We're gonna add some fresh herbs. Now, I think that fresh herbs are highly underutilized. How many of you use fresh herbs in your cooking? Okay, so most of you do, that's good. I think they add so much flavor, and they're just something that people don't use very often, and I'm like, why? So anyway, I actually found this nifty little potted herb garden from Trader Joe's that has thyme, sage, and rosemary, which happen to be 3 of the most prevalent fresh herbs this time of year. And it's cool because it's living, so you can just set it in your windowsill and just pick off what you need throughout the season. So anyway, I picked that rosemary that I put in there and this thyme off of there as well. And so I'm just gonna kind of strip some of the thyme leaves off of here. So you just kind of run your finger down the stem and take off the leaves. Okay. And then we're just gonna give the leaves kind of a rough chop. For parsley, I kind of just shuck the leaves off with my knife. So you get a little bit of stem, but you get mostly the leaves off of there too. So we're actually going to use a combination of the fresh plus what I have here is poultry seasoning.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So poultry seasoning is generally thyme, rosemary, sage, marjoram, and a combination of different spices that they generally use to season turkey or chicken or so forth. So this is just a little bit more concentrated flavor. So we have the flavors of fresh running through, and then we have a greater variety. Now I like to get the poultry seasoning because then you don't have to buy sage, marjoram, you know, thyme, parsley, all of the different ones. It's just kind of ground up in there. And poultry seasoning is definitely a classic for stuffing. So we're gonna season this up with some poultry seasoning, some fresh herbs, and a little bit of salt and fresh cracked pepper. So now you want to make sure you add your spices before you add any source of moisture, okay? Because you want the seasonings to hit that hot pan, that really helps the flavor come out a lot more. Okay, so we're adding this before we add, for example, our eggs, because this is gonna help those flavors or those spices kind of bloom, essentially. That's what it's called, actually. It's called blooming your spices. So I'm putting about 3 teaspoons in here. And one thing I actually forgot to pick up, but would certainly be a lovely addition, would be garlic. So now, then we got some fresh cracked pepper. I do like fresh cracked just because I feel like it has more flavor than the stuff that's been sitting on the shelf a while, already ground.
That's really good.
Yeah. Pretty easy too. Some fresh cracked pepper and a little bit of kosher salt as well, just to kind of help all of those flavors come out. And the veggies are really starting to soften up with the high heat, which is great. Now, as a substitution for bread, you guys know what we're using?
The egg?
Well, we are using egg. What else?
Almond flour?
Yeah, so it's sitting right here. So I'm gonna use almond flour, which in fact is not flour at all. It's just ground up almonds, okay? But almonds are gonna give you a protein and a nutrition punch that bread perhaps would not. And so the pulsed up almonds kind of resemble flour in a way. However, it's certainly not as starchy and it's much higher in protein. So there's the thyme, here's the parsley. And then I would say we are about there as far as getting the vegetables kind of cooked through. We are, of course, also baking this because we have to cook the eggs all the way through. And so it'll continue to cook and stuff while we have it in the oven. I have 3 eggs that I've just whisked up right here. Even if you were making traditional stuffing, usually you use eggs just to kind of help bind it all together. And then we have the 2 cups of almond flour. And I'm going to add just a few dried cranberries. But it just gives that kind of like chewy, nutty, good flavor in there. Right?
Yes.
And we're gonna go ahead and shove that in the oven and let that bake a little bit and get kind of browned on the top. That's the goal. I'm gonna set it for 30 minutes, but it probably won't take that long.
At what temperature?
I just have it at 350.
Okay.
Yeah. So while the potatoes are finishing cooking, I'm gonna make our salad, which actually in my recipe over here it says shredded Brussels sprout salad, which I love to make, but unfortunately when I went to the grocery store the Brussels sprouts were not looking very good, and so I improvised, and we're actually not making it with Brussels sprouts, although you totally could. You can make it with kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. I'm using a combination. This is spring mix, and then I also have this herb salad mix, and it's just a combination of different salad greens. We've got some arugula in here, some red leaf lettuce, green leaf lettuce, spinach, and baby kale, and it's just a really good combo. So now gauge how much to make here. So I'm basically just filling up my bowl. Save a little bit. And we're just gonna add some classic fall flavors on there. So I've got my dried cranberries. When I make a salad, I always say fat, fiber, and fun. Okay? Those are like my 3 components of making a salad that is more satisfying. Okay? Because if you just ate a bowl of greens, it's not very satisfying, okay? So we've got the fiber. Okay, we'll start with the fiber part. We've got the greens, obviously, which are gonna contribute some sort of fiber. And then you wanna add whatever other type of vegetables that you enjoy. I'm actually going to add some red onion. And what I have here is pickled red onion. I make some pickled red onion. I just keep it in my fridge. I add it to everything. It's, in my opinion, very good. It's just a red onion in a combination of salt and apple cider vinegar. I'm just gonna give these a quick chop and add them on top of our salad, not to mention they give a great color boost as well. So that's kind of our fiber component, and then I always say some sort of fat. Okay, so fat could be coming from olives or avocado, or in our case, we're going to be using some nuts. You could use nuts or seeds, sunflower seeds. I'm gonna use some toasted almonds, and I just buy these already pre-toasted, and they add a nice crunch and a nice flavor and a good source of fat to your salad. So, just adding on a big handful of toasted nuts. And then fun would be some sort of item that perhaps does not contribute a whole lot of nutrition, but makes your salad really appealing and delicious to eat. Okay, so in a lot of cases, I would use cheese, okay, because I think that that is appealing and delicious. or some dried fruit, and we're actually going to use both today. So I have some dried cranberries, and this is going to add some fiber as well, so it's kind of hitting both of our F's. And so we'll sprinkle these on. I do try and buy unsweetened dried fruit, because a lot of dried fruit will have sugar added, and fruit has enough sugar as is. It doesn't need any added sugar, right? So trying to buy the unsweetened varieties of dried fruit is a good strategy for reducing your overall sugar intake. Okay, so then I also have about 3 ounces of goat cheese.
Love goat cheese.
I think goat cheese is very delicious around the holidays, and a great addition to any salad. So I'm just kind of crumbling this on here in big chunks. We're going to make kind of a citrusy vinaigrette to go on top. And I'll show you how we're gonna do that. We're gonna use orange and lemon. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make it in this, I'll make it in this jar actually. It says my name on it. Okay, so I'm going to use, orange and lemon, just a little mandarin orange. And I'm actually have my microplane here. I'm just gonna take some of the zest off. Whenever I use citrus, I like to use the zest and the juice. Reinforces the flavor. So you just want to take off that initial part of the rind. You don't want to get that pith underneath the white pithy part because it's pretty bitter. So take off some of the orange zest and then some of the lemon zest. You want probably about a teaspoon total. The peel actually has the majority of the nutrition in lemons. But we don't normally eat the peel because that's not very appealing. So this is a good way to kind of get some of that in a yummier sort of way. Okay, so we have our fresh thyme. I'm also putting that in our vinaigrette. And then I'm going to do the citrus juices. So just cutting these in half and putting in the juice in there as well. Now, when you make a salad dressing, you want, again, kind of a source of sour, a source of fat, and a source of sweet to help it kind of balance out. You kind of just squeeze it through your fingers to catch the seeds. Looks like one seed got in there, but you catch most of the seeds by just going through. Perfect. See, you don't want those seeds to fall in there. So we've got about several tablespoons of citrus juice in there. Now, this is acting a little bit as our sweet. We're also just gonna add just a touch of agave nectar just to bring out a little bit of sweetness. So about 1 to 2 teaspoons. And then we're also putting in about 1 to 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, and mustard actually works as an emulsifier for your dressing to kind of bind the liquidy or water / vinegar / citrus juice with the oil. So I'm gonna put just some good quality Dijon in there. About 1 to 2 teaspoons, about the same amount that you put of the agave. And then a little pinch each of salt and pepper. And then our olive oil. Nice.
You can't tell. It's all
Okay,
brown.
so we're having about 2 parts olive oil, 1 part citrus. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just eyeball it here. And that's generally your algorithm for any vinaigrette is 2 to 1. So 2 parts olive oil, 1 part vinegar. Okay? And then I love making dressings in jars because it's really simple and you can really get it mixed together and emulsify just by putting the lid on the jar. So we're just gonna kind of drizzle that over our salad, and then we'll go ahead and toss it right before we eat it. So we've got our cauliflower and potatoes here, okay? I'm just gonna go ahead and set them on the table. Okay. It's okay if a couple of leaves of rosemary make it in there, but rosemary is not like the most fun thing to eat. So if you can get out that major sprig of rosemary, that's probably a good idea. Okay, so we're gonna add a little bit of butter. I have probably about, well, whatever was left from the 2 to 3 tablespoons we already used. So I'm gonna do about 4 tablespoons probably, a little bit in here. And then we're also just going to use a splash of milk to help it just kind of come together. And our potato masher, this is again going to be kind of a rustic mash because we still have the peels on there. And there's some cauliflower in there too, and the cauliflower actually is gonna provide a lot of texture as well. Now, if you like really smooth mashed potatoes, you can get like a ricer, like a potato ricer. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen those, but then the little potato comes through and it's really light and fluffy. Sometimes I do that, but it doesn't work great for cauliflower. So I prefer this one to be a little, and I'm gonna keep going a little bit, but I'm going to season it up with salt and pepper. Potatoes are pretty bland on their own, so they take a little bit of coaxing for flavor to come out. That's why we use the vegetable broth, the rosemary, salt and pepper, and other things to get a little bit more flavor out of something that would otherwise be a little bit bland. So, quite a bit in there. I hope people like black pepper, not allergic or anything.
So garlic would be good too, right?
Yeah. Just add a little bit more. Just help it come together.